Hello everybody, this is Bradley from Race Beacon. Today, the FIA gave us a new update on what's going on with this whole budget cap drama. And do we have a better idea of who might be getting penalties, if any are dished out? If you haven't watched our previous video where we went over every single penalty that can be applied by the FIA to those pesky rule breakers, then go check it out in the top right or on the channel page. But anyway, let's take a look at this new statement put out today. So first off, I want to give some context of what's actually happened today because it's been pretty chaotic. It's the first day that the teams and journalists are sort of in Japan, and the FIA said we'll be putting out a statement about the FIA cost cap and what's going on later in the day. And everyone assumed that was 12 o'clock UK time, lunchtime, and at 12 o'clock lunchtime in the UK, this came out, F1 22 Japanese Grand Prix preview. We were well and truly baited on that one, and Twitter took it as well as you'd expect Twitter to take it. But once the document finally did come out, as we have here, it gave us some new information that's definitely important to look out for this weekend. So this document did finally come out, but it came out I think at like 2 AM Japan time, which is just absolutely ridiculous. We had journalists and former F1 staff talking to their former team members or people they know in the paddock, and all of them had no idea either. They were as in the dark about this as everyone sitting there refreshing their Twitter feeds. But we did finally get the statement, so let's take a dive into what it actually says. So we start off with the FIA informs that the conclusion of the analysis of the 2021 financial submissions. So obviously this is all related to the 2021 Formula 1 season. Again, you can take a look at the penalties that can be applied in this video here. I'm not going to go over all the penalties again and what it could mean, but I think we go over it really well in this video. But yeah, any penalties that are going to be applied from a sporting perspective will probably come to the 2021 season. But then there's also room for like aero stuff. But again, I cover that in a video. If you haven't watched it or you don't know, go watch it. If you know it, brilliant, let's carry on. So the 2021 financial submissions of the Formula 1 teams and the subsequent release of certificates of compliance to the financial regulations will not take place on Wednesday the 5th of October. And now obviously that was quite clear to people at the track because they were like, hang on, we haven't received our certificate yet, and it was meant to all be happening today. But the analysis of financial submissions is a long and complex process that is ongoing and will be concluded to enable the release of the certificates on Monday the 10th of October. So only, 4 days away from when I upload this video. It's technically 5 days now as I'm recording it at night, but it will be going out in the morning. For me, the fact that it's only being delayed for 5 days, I'm not sure. There's two possibilities here. For me, I think the first thing here is the FIA might be a bit scared of having a whole weekend of negative press aimed at two teams. If they announce that two teams have broken the budget cap, which is still expected, we still believe, we haven't heard any other teams floating around. We expect it to be Aston Martin and Red Bull. Although there has been some movement away from the idea that one team had a major breach, it now seems that both teams may have had a minor breach. And bear in mind that minor is basically anything less than 5% extra of the budget cap. So about, I think, $7.5 million or euros, somewhere in that region, which is still a significant amount of money and development. And for me, the FIA should come down incredibly harshly because it's like football. You're either onside or you're off. You're either over the budget cap and gained an advantage, albeit a small one, or you're not and you're fine. I would like to see a similar approach to that, but I'm not sure that's what we're actually going to see. The second possibility, I think, as well, is they are basically pushing it to the 10th of October with the option to delay again. Of course, it's the FIA. They can do whatever the hell they want. But I think pushing it a little bit down the road, away from this Japanese Grand Prix weekend, like I said in the first point, it sort of keeps the media away from the topic. Of course, there'll still be discussion, but they're not going to be harassing team principals over, oh, do you think it should be this penalty, and take away from the actual racing product. But I think as well, the fact that it's only 5 days indicates it's probably a fairly minor dispute that they think having everyone at the track, they'll be able to have direct meetings with the team principals, team members, accountants maybe even, and lawyers of course as well, who may be involved in this process. They can have a face-to-face chat with them and try to sort of grind through everything that still needs to be solved over this weekend. And obviously after 10th of October, after this weekend in Suzuka, we have quite a nice gap until the next race. So it does give some time for, I don't know, the team principals to go into hiding or something for a couple of weeks before coming back to the next Grand Prix, which is obviously going to keep the media heat off of them a little bit when we do come back in a couple of weeks' time to the next race. So I think overall this is a beneficial decision. I think it's definitely worse for us fans, but for the mental stability of anyone involved in this process, I think it's probably better having this extra 5-day delay. We were given a little bit more here. We got the financial regulations were agreed unanimously by all competitors. So again, this could be a subtle hint in any debate they're having. They're like, look, you know, if we come down harsh, they agreed to it. You know, F1 agreed to it, who have worked positively and collaboratively with the FIA cost cap administration throughout this first year under the financial regulations. As previously communicated, and yes, they have said this with the exact same words, there has been significant and unsubstantiated speculation and conjecture in relation to this matter. And that's not saying it's not true, it's just saying, well, yeah, you know, you're not basing it off of anything that came from us, and yeah, that's because they haven't released anything yet. So anything that comes out in the Formula 1 paddock, until it's officially confirmed, is just unsubstantiated conjecture. Doesn't mean it's not true. Like I said in our previous video, this could well end up just being a completely non-story. It was like the flexi wings and flexi floors or whatever earlier in the season with Ferrari and Red Bull supposedly having illegal floors, and it just never really happened. So, you know, just because it's a rumour doesn't mean it's necessarily true, but there's a lot of heat coming from this. And we have seen Helmut Marko say that if Max Verstappen is stripped of his championship from last year, which I don't think the FIA will want to touch, as I said again in that last video, the FIA will not want to touch last year's result with the dirtiest and longest of sticks. The amount of, well, stick they've already taken from that result, I don't think they'll want to go back to it. But I do think they'll come down very harshly, or I hope they'll come down very harshly on anyone who has been found to break the rules. I don't care which team it was. Again, I go back to that football analogy. You're either onside or you're off. It's the same penalty no matter how far off you are. But they got to say, and the FIA reiterates that until it is finalised, no further information will be provided. I mean, they haven't actually given us much information at all. Apart from that, I think we'll get the only two more things we could get from the FIA on this, I think, are either an announcement of a new delay, so pushing back that 10th of October even further, or the actual documents and penalties will actually come out. So I think those are the only two real things we're waiting on the FIA for. I don't see anything else coming about this now. They'll want to have a quiet weekend, not talk about it too much, and then come back to it after Suzuka. The FIA also reiterates that any suggestion that FIA personnel have disclosed sensitive information is equally baseless. And this comes from a supposed leak on Twitter last night. I don't believe it in the slightest. We've had enough time now of this story being out there for people to make these fake documents, come up with fake stories using quotes and so on. I just don't believe any of the leaks that we see online unless it comes from a journalist who's leaking it. I just don't believe it at all. And if you see anything on Twitter, any documents that supposedly come from the FIA, if I haven't made a video on it, if one of the top journalists haven't tweeted about it, if Formula 1 themselves haven't said it, or the FIA account, don't believe it. If someone posts a screenshot on Twitter with a document, don't even bother reading it. But anyway, that's my top advice, because Twitter, well, we all know what Twitter's like. But guys, let me know down in the comments if you think this is a good sign or not for some of the teams, if this dispute's still going on. And also, again, what you'd quite like to see the penalty to be, because it's really interesting to read some of the comments on that other video about, you know, how harsh people want to be with this. A lot of people came up with some brilliant ideas. So if you have an idea for a different penalty that could be applied, let me know in the comments down below. There were some brilliant ones in the last video, and in fact, we might go over some of them in a separate video in the future as well, because you guys are really clever. So show off a little bit more in the comments. I always read them all and try to respond to as many as I can. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps out, and leave a like on the video. But guys, until next time, goodbye.